Welcome to the monologue with Sibuse El Kunene. Remember, it's a monologue on video, but it's a dialogue on the comment section. Today, I want us to touch on a topic that is very sensitive, a topic that when we don't handle it with the care and sensitivity that it deserves, it can end up doing more harm than good. And therefore, it is important that we exercise restraint, we exercise wisdom when we talk about it. It's not one of those exciting topics. It's not one of those make you feel good kind of topics, but it is a topic and a conversation that we must have, a conversation that will get us to think and hopefully talk to our humanity, a conversation that will inspire us to do things differently, to act differently, to be more considerate. So one of my favorite scriptures is Isaiah 53. And I marvel every time when I read that scripture because Isaiah writes about the suffering Christ or the suffering servant long before the servant himself is actually born. And when he does that in the past tense, which is quite fascinating for me. And maybe the linguistics can just, break that down for me, that how is it that somebody writes, and the theologians and the Bible scholars, how is it that Isaiah writes about a future in the past tense? Not that he will, but he says he has. This is what has happened. It's as if he has seen it happening. And similarly, he is shown something that has already happened, which then tells me that everything that we are going through, that we will go through, everything that is still going to happen 4, 7, maybe 1,000 years from today has already happened. And there is a prophet who has already seen it, or there is a prophet who, when they become connected to God, they can be shown in very detailed accounts of what has happened. And all we are doing is just seeing what has happened unfold. And so in Isaiah 53, the prophet Isaiah says, he was wounded for our transgression. He was bruised for our iniquities. And the chastisement for our peace was upon him. But this has not happened. It would make sense if the book of Isaiah is in the New Testament, and even then it is written after the crucifixion of Christ. You could say, okay, he is referencing that, but he's actually talking about something that's going to happen about 700 years later in the past tense. He's writing about it in the past tense. And the one part that I want to draw your attention to is when Isaiah says, he is a man acquainted with grief, and he has carried our sorrows. So Christ has carried our sorrows, but he's a man acquainted with grief. What does it mean to be acquainted? You're familiarized with grief. You're familiarized with sorrow. So that means most likely he may have been in that state of what we today may think is depression, or what we can think is depression. I don't mean by any means that it was, but it's what we can think it is. And therefore, if Christ has already gone through that long before the prophet Isaiah speaks about it, that means we are not immune to it. Both males and females, we are not immune to it. However, there are often conversations that happen where when male suicide is spoken of, because the what can I say? I don't want to say the success rate. So, right. Maybe the completion rate for suicide is higher amongst males and is more violent according to research and the statistics. And while I was preparing for this conversation, I looked up and noted that globally, males account for 12.3%. 12.3, male suicide is at 12.3 times more. Oh, it's 12.3 times per 100,000. And female suicide is 5.6 times per 100,000. 12.3 versus 5.6, and this is globally. So the male to female ratio is about 2.2 to 1. And that's globally, according to the WHO statistics. And this is data from 2021. And things have become even more difficult since 2021 when we look at, the global trends, financial crises in families and households. We look at how people are becoming more and more indebted, how people are, specifically also men, are struggling to find opportunities, or specifically economic opportunities. And then you start thinking, what would be the statistics for South Africa? And then my mind went there. And so I want to share this with you. So the population, the suicide rate per 100,000 for males, it's 35.4 compared to the global average, which is 12.3. So that's more than double the global rate for males in South Africa. And then for females in South Africa, it's 9.9 times, whereas the global is 5.6 times. So that's even higher than the global average. And also, putting it into context, this is for the WHO member states that participated on the surveys. So if this was added globally to every country in the world, how would the statistics look like? So let's focus then on the male statistics, 35.4 per 100,000. That's a lot of people dying. And then the statistics say roughly one male suicide death annually for every 2,825 males. So these figures are too high, way too high. And that, again, on its own, it's just statistics, right? And it also does not account for the times when the death is hidden by the family. It does not account for, when somebody just kind of disappears. It does not account for the other areas that have not been reached. So when you take all of that, it's most likely very high. And the question is, what are we doing about it? There are initiatives that are happening. There are conversations. There are programs that are running. I note that in South Africa there is a department for women and children, but there is no department for men. There's no department for families. Social development focuses on social work, and organizations that focus on families, there are quite a few of them. There's like the family and marriage, there's FAMSA, Family and Marriage South Africa. And there are other organizations that are doing work, social work for families. And I often see them requesting funding, struggling for funding, struggling to reach as many people as they would like to. And then you wonder, if they were fully funded, what would the picture look like? What impact would it have on families? What impact would it have on men? And sometimes, as much as we may want to gloss over it, people tend to relate to their kind. Men tend to relate to other men because there's a thing about being a maid that enables you to understand another man's pain. There's a thing about being a male that helps you understand and connect with another man on a level that you would not otherwise with a woman or female. And females to males as well, they do have that connectivity. However, it's different when it comes to men, female to female. So imagine if there were more male counselors. Imagine if men could know that if I pick up this phone, the person on the other side is going to hear me without judging me. That when he seeks counseling, he'll be affirmed for his vulnerability as well as his strength, because it takes courage and strength to come out as a man and say, I'm struggling. I have been struggling. And at times, I've had ideas of ending my life, of ending it all, because I think the world would be a better place without me in it. I think if I just fixed those, make sure that all those policies are in place, make sure that the life insurance is there, then if I exit, then they will be better off without me. And I won't have to face the struggle. Yes, I acknowledge that I made mistakes, that I made bad decisions, and those bad decisions led me to where I am now. And because of those bad decisions and those choices that I made, I find myself in this position. I've learned my lesson, but am I really going to get out? Am I going to get out of this situation? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? How long will I be in this cycle? For how long will I experience this? I'm enough. There are expectations upon me. There are things that I need to carry, responsibilities that I need to own up to. But it's difficult. And so if I were to exit, they will be better off without me. And so in his mind, he thinks about that. He thinks, I've already suffered. I don't want to suffer in my exit. So the only way is to make sure that when I do it and it is done. And so he chooses the most violent means to exit. And he thinks he's solving a problem. You think you're solving a problem, but you're not. Because in doing that, you have opened a door for this spirit of unaliving yourself to then carry through in your lineage, in your family, in your genealogy. That's the first one. You've opened that door. And now, those that you wanted to be better off without you are now struggling because of this. And so there's another one, there's another one, there's another one down the line. You are not there to stop it anymore. You can't. There's no way for you to stop it because you've left. You've created this thing and you've left. And then everyone else who loves you, everyone else who cares about you is then left wondering, why didn't he reach out? Why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you come out and say, I need help? Why didn't you just hold on? Why didn't you tell them? Why didn't you seek counseling? Why they are left with so many questions. But we could have worked this out, they think. And then, because most of the time people who unalive themselves tend to encourage others and uplift them, and in doing that, often blindside people to what they are planning to do. I remember hearing a story from someone who was saying they had this friend when they were young. This friend, he was the life of the party. He was the kindest person. He was the most inspirational person. He would encourage others. And on the last day that he was with his friend, they were at an event and they were traveling together and they were having such a fantastic conversation on the way, and he dropped him off at home and, the normal usual goodbyes, and then he left. The next day he heard that that very same person had ended their life. Wouldn't understand it. So you leave those questions. They keep asking questions for answers they'll never get because you can never give those answers. So then, is it worth it? The immediate answer is no. Does it solve the problem? No, it doesn't. Trust me, it doesn't. Just as when somebody has made you angry, so angry that you are beside yourself and you go and you harm them, it still does not solve the problem. Instead, it creates more. So taking your life does not solve anything. Instead, it creates more problems. And unfortunately, it creates more problems than anyone else can solve. What then also happens is the enemy has won, because what the devil does is he leads you, he whispers thoughts and your mind entertains those thoughts. And as you entertain those thoughts, a situation that was this small then is now this big, and then this big, and then this big, and then this big, because you can't talk about it. You keep mulling over your head. You keep ruminating in your thoughts about that. And by doing so, it gets bigger than it was supposed to be. And before you know it, the enemy says to you, see, it's not worth it. And it would be better off if you didn't exist, because if you didn't exist, then none of this would be up to you. You wouldn't have to face any of this. And so you think yes, and then you go over the edge. In that last final moment, the enemy steps back, and then boom, you go through with it. And in that moment when the enemy steps back, you hear the voice, but it's too late. When you've taken the rope and you've hung it, you've taken the chair, you've climbed, and you kick the chair. And then the reality sinks in that actually this is happening now. And because you've made sure that nobody is there, nobody's around, help is not coming. So you realize, why am I doing this? I shouldn't have done this. Shouldn't have done this. God help me. Shouldn't have done this. Why am I doing this? And then probably all the solutions that were blocked because your thoughts were overwhelmed by the enemy, they start coming. But I could have. But everything is happening so fast that you can't even stop it. Everything is happening so fast. You cannot stop it now. It's too late. The enemy leads you on the edge. And then you look down. And then that fear comes, and then he says, don't be afraid. Just jump. And you take that step. And as you take that step, with no point of return, he leaves you. He laughs at you. And you think, oh. And you take that weapon and you point it at yourself. The moment you pull the trigger, it's like, no, but it's too late. And that's why, for those of us who know people who have a relationship with God, and we hear God say, pray for someone, or call someone, or go to someone, it is important to do that immediately, because you may save a life. Some people are just looking for the glimmer of hope, just for that one person to say, hey, you know, I was sitting here and God said I should call you. How are you? And just that turns everything around. And so, my friend, all I want to say to you is that there's hope. And if you are going through those thoughts, you are going through that phase, and you are entertaining those thoughts, don't act. Just sit with them. Sit with them. You'll be prompted. Something will push you to act, to materialize them. Just stop. Sit with those thoughts. Sit. I promise you it goes away. But sit. Sit. Don't stop. Just don't do anything. Just sit with those thoughts. And before you know it, start to subside. Because the Bible says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. When Jesus was tempted by the devil 3 times, or maybe it was more than 3 times, but we don't know for sure, but it was 3 times that it's recorded that the devil came to Jesus and said, and Jesus rebutted the devil by saying, it is written. And I invite you to read Isaiah 53 and see how Jesus handled it, how actually Isaiah prophesies about the Messiah. That's a rhyming, Isaiah, Messiah. Nonetheless, that's what he does. He prophesies. And then you go read the accounts in the New Testament where Jesus is at the Garden of Gethsemane and he says, Father, take this cup from me. And then he says, nevertheless, not according to my will, but yours. So it shows the difficulty and what he was wrestling with. Have you gone through so much difficulty that you were sweating blood? Because that's what Jesus was going through. Have you gone through what Jesus has gone through in sweating blood? Because of the intensity of what faced. And so I invite you to say, there is hope. I can't tell you when. I don't know how. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that there's hope. That there's hope for you. That things will turn around. They may not wholesale turn around. It may not be a global shift, but it will be a micro shift. Day by day, moment by moment, it will be a global shift. And when that shift takes place, it becomes a whole different ballgame. Depression is real. Suicide is real. And so is hope. And a future. Because God knows the plans that He has for you. It is towards an expected end, not an unexpected one. And so, if you're struggling, make sure that you contact those organizations. There is South African Depression and Anxiety Group. There are other organizations that you can work with that can help you through. Soon, you turn the corner because you've helped. So my friends, all I want to say to you is, it's real. Both sides are real. Depression and suicide is real. So is hope and a future. Choose. Choose life. Choose Christ. Choose a relationship with God. Press on towards the prize for the mark, press on towards the mark of the prize of the high calling. It's Jesus. And James says, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing that the trying of your faith works patience. The trying of your faith. The trying of your faith. The trying of your faith works patience. And then Philippians 4 verse 6, it says, do not be anxious for anything, but by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. There's hope, my friends. There's hope. Trust me, there's hope. I'm living through it.